Welcome back, PetaPixel viewers. It is Chris Niccolls here, and I have got a strange one for you today. Look at this, a Sigma 15mm f 1.4 DGDN fisheye, and it's not a circular fisheye, it's a diagonal fisheye. We have never seen a lens like this before, something that gives us a diagonal fisheye this wide, but with a 1.4 aperture, so we're gonna get playing with it. Now, at first glance, this absolutely reminds me of the Sigma 14mm f1.4, which is one of my favorite lenses. Of course, a rectilinear wide angle, did beautiful astrophotography, great in low light. But this 15mm fisheye, I don't shoot fisheyes. I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this lens. It's gonna be a unique experience, but I definitely wanna get into lower light situations to really test out that 1.4 aperture. So of course a 15mm 1.4 fisheye is going to be physically quite large. Look at this cap there, very fancy to protect that bulbous front element from damage. I'm sure I'll still find a way. Now this is part of their Art Series lens, so it's going to be very well built. I mean, I like the manual focus, it's really well dampened. We have a beautiful aperturing on here that we can also lock up into auto mode. This does have a customizable button. Now as usual, we have a selector switch to go from autofocus to manual focus, but curiously we also have the exact same function that we found on the 14mm, which locks the manual focus. Even if the camera's in manual focus mode and you touch the ring, it won't refocus, or if you turn the camera off and on again, it won't lose your focusing point. This is really handy if you get precise focus on something like stars for astrophotography, something the 14mm did so well. We also have the option to de-click the aperture ring if we want it to be smooth. That's a nice thing as well. And a beautiful lens collar that can be removed. It is cut for Arca Swiss style tripod heads. Now all of this is going to be wrapped up in a nice rugged package like all Sigma Art Series lenses, but it does have some weight to it, 1,360 grams. I mean, that's the exact same weight as the Sigma 500mm 5.6, so it's a bit to carry around. Now, of course, on a lens this wide, you're gonna have a built-in integrated hood to protect it from the sunlight and flare. Now, you can't put filters on, obviously, but you do have a rear gelatin filter mount in the back of the lens. So on a sunny day like today, it can actually be hard with a lens this wide not to have the sun in the shot all the time. So how does it handle flare? Well, you can see here actually really well. Sigma coatings are always excellent. I'm not seeing any loss of contrast. I'm not getting any ghosting. Even when I stop the aperture down tight, it's still very clean. Now, because we have the sun out, I also have a nice opportunity to test sunstars here. Stopping down to f16, you can see the sunstars, it's got a lot of points, which is quite dramatic. They're just not super sharp. So I do like the look of the sunstars here, but it's not like overly dramatic. It's not gonna blow me away. All right, we had a fun time downtown, but it was loud. There's lots of sirens, lots of stuff going on. Jordan wanted the piece of the countryside, so here we are. Let's keep going with the review. We're gonna talk about Bokeh next, longitudinal chromatic aberration. We always like to test bright, wide aperture lenses for Bokeh, and this is where you get that color cast in the foreground and background out of focus areas. Didn't really notice anything on this lens, which is nice. It's hard to get rid of in post, but luckily it's not an issue here. But because this lens does have such a wide aperture and can deliver shallow depth of field when you're focusing close on things, I also want to look at bokeh. So as you can see here at 1.4, we're actually getting quite a pronounced cat's eye effect, which I honestly think would look really cool, like swirly cat's eye all around the outside of the frame to go with the perspective distortion. I think that'd be really, really cool. When you stop down to f2.8, you'll notice actually the specular highlights get nice and round. We lose a lot of that cat's eye effect. And I actually did really like the way that focus falls off on this lens from in focus to out of focus. I think it actually has beautiful rendering of out of focus areas. Now, you might not think autofocus to be that useful on a fisheye lens. I mean, it's ultra wide, you get a lot of depth of field anyways, but Sigma has put their HLA motors in here, their high-speed linear actuators, and it is useful if you're gonna shoot things like sports and action. Think things like snowboarding, skateboarding, stuff where you get really close for those fun, funky shots. Also, any sort of stage musician kind of stuff up close where you have lots of live action. And actually, this lens focuses incredibly fast. I was impressed. Even though there's big optical formulas inside, lots of glass to move, it actually does a really snappy job, as you can see here, from close up all the way to infinity. So I just want to address the fact that this is a diagonal fisheye. And for those that might not know, that means that this still covers a full frame scene. You do get that distortion and that curvature towards the edge of the frames, but it's not as dramatic as you might think. Not like a circular fisheye, which we often see where you get like a round shape in the center of your full frame and it's incredibly distorted. This is still far more useful in a lot of situations, but because it's a fisheye, when it came to sharpness, I still didn't want to use our regular test chart. So we did something a bit different. We decided to shoot real world examples. And for example, here at a cityscape, nice clear sky, shooting at 1.4, I was very impressed with how sharp this lens is, not only in the center, but also here looking to the corners. You actually get really good sharpness at 1.4. Stopping down here to f2.8, we do get some improvement, but really it's quite minor. This lens is quite sharp. So yes, I was very impressed by this lens's sharpness, even at 1.4 wide open. At distance, there's a big caveat because when we went to go close with this lens, then things change. Now, this lens can get fairly close, about 1.25 feet away from the actual sensor. Just given the length of the lens, that means that you're just a few inches away from the hood here. First thing, like any ultra-wide lens, is you often get the shadow of the camera and the lens in the shot. But when you can work around that, focusing close, unfortunately wide open at 1.4, you can see here the sharpness goes way down. We get a very blurred, smeared effect when wide open. I had to go down to about f2.8 to really get that to go away and sharpen up close. So that means that the advantage of having this 1.4 really only applies when you're focusing further away, at least 10 feet or beyond. If you're going to start to focus close shooting wide open, the sharpness does drop pretty rapidly. Okay, and we're back. And I want to say we're back because here's some context. We're in the same location that we were just in, but it has been about a week. Here's the thing. This weather that you see right now has settled in. It's been snowy, cold, yucky, and hazy, and yet we wanted to test this lens for what it was really intended for, and that is astrophotography. Unfortunately, even city lights we can't shoot in this weather. It's super hazy and of course no stars visible in the sky. But we really wanted to talk about this. So luckily Sigma did provide some full res photos shot by some other ambassadors that we want to show here and kind of evaluate, because this is really what Sigma wanted to make. Something that gives you curvature of the landscape, interesting perspectives, but still get large skies, a lot like their 14mm 1.4, which is also excellent for astrophotography. As you can see here in the corners, first off, even shooting at 1.4, it's nice and sharp all the way across the frame. We're not seeing any coma in the corners and none of that sagittal astigmatism where you get those weird batwing kind of shapes and stuff. So really the performance here, even wide open for astrophotography, is very impressive. So I think if you're the kind of photographer who just wants something a little bit different in their astrophotography, this could absolutely be a specialized niche but very good lens for that purpose. You know, I first saw this come across the desk, I was like, is Sigma crazy to make this lens? But now I think they're crazy like a fox. This is actually very smart. First off, it really showcases just how good an optical manufacturer Sigma is, that they can make unique niche products that might not have a huge mass market appeal, but they still want to take care of photographers and provide tools for artists that not everybody might need, but anybody who does use will enjoy. Now, as specialized as this lens is, I think it might have more versatility than you might think at first. I mean, I absolutely enjoyed the literal twist that it puts on interior architecture, straight walls and compositions becoming very dynamic, very fluid looking. I think this would be an awesome video lens, you know, for music videos where you want that diagonal look. Certainly extreme sports like skateboarding, snowboarding up close could be good for that too. And absolutely for indoor concerts and low light situations where that 1.4 is very effective at collecting enough light. The only caveat I have with that lens is if you're going to shoot anything close to the frame, you definitely want to stop down. But I think Sigma's made a very interesting optic here. I'm sorry we couldn't get you all the sample photos ourselves. We always endeavor to do that, but hopefully you still found this video educational in deciding for you whether this unique optic is the right choice for your work. Please leave your comments below. Let us know your feedback. We'd love to see that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Why not? And also listen to the PetaPixel podcast. It's on the exact same YouTube channel or all your favorite podcasting apps. Just look for the PetaPixel podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon with more episodes, hopefully when it's warmer.